This lab is a challenge, but if you do TDD one step at a time, you'll be fine. In this lab, you're going to build a class whose purpose is to compute a bunch of different statistics about strings. I totally understand that this is not a realistic problem. The goal is to practice writing loops, so think of this as wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. This is the test code that the lab starts you with. Let's decode it to make sure you understand the details of what's happening. It starts by declaring two constants that are strings. The tests are going to run on those two strings. Since they're different, the statistics you calculate will have different values for them. Using two inputs in the tests is a strategy called triangulation. Suppose one of our requirements is that we have to count the number of blanks in a string. If we tested that method only on sentence 1, our method could return a 3 and pass the test. By making our tests check both strings, we're requiring the code to actually calculate the results. So, our tests will test against both of these strings. The class that we're building is named sentence counter. What a sentence counter needs to know is the string that it's working on. What it needs to do is calculate various statistics about the string it's holding. Since we want to test on two different strings, we're going to need two instances of sentence counter. This method is marked with @before, so it will be run before each of our tests. All it does is create our two instances of sentence counter. The constructor for sentence counter has one parameter that is the sentence the object will be dealing with. It will have to store that parameter into its instance variable, just like the constructor for book had to save its title in its constructor.
There's a clue there. Don't forget that you have a bunch of code that you can look at for clues for how to do things. The constructor of sentence counter is going to look a lot like the constructor for book.
We are passing sentence 1, this is my sentence, into the constructor for SC1, and sentence 2, these words make another sentence that is longer, into SC2. Just to make sure you see what's happening here, let's look at the memory diagram for what this code has built. Our tests are in an object whose type is test sentence counter. In that object, we have references to two constants and our two instance variables. The two constants each point at an instance of string that contains the string they were given. Each of our instance variables points at an instance of sentence counter. Each of those has its own instance variable, and they remember the strings we gave them when we created them. Your job is to build sentence counter. The first test is just checking to see that we can call a getter in sentence counter to get back the string we gave it at construction.
This is exactly like the first test of the book class, where we made sure to give back the title that we had been passed into the constructor.
From there, the lab will give you a sequence of tests, and you will have to write loops to make each test pass. As an example, here's the next test. It requires that you build a new method named countBlanks. The goal of that method is to return the number of blanks in the string. SC1 string has 3 blanks, and SC2 string has 7 blanks. Always figure out your strategy in English before you try to write any Java code. For this one, the strategy is walk through the string. At each position, if it's a blank, increment a counter. When the loop ends, return the counter. Once you have a strategy, figure out whether it's a count-controlled or a sentinel-controlled loop. That will tell you if you want a for loop or a while loop. And remember what that walking through the string loop looked like. If you want to walk all the way through the string, that's the loop you want.